Imagine being sent to jail for making a tasteless joke, set up for the sole and clearly stated purpose of annoying your partner. You protest your innocence. It was only a joke, you cry as the cell door slams behind you. This is the reality faced by Scottish comedian and YouTuber Count Dankula, and it's an absolute fucking travesty. Welcome to a rather different episode of the Weirdnet. Now, this is going to be something of a departure to the usual Weirdnet content, but given the potential repercussions of this case on myself and any other UK-based content creators, and most importantly, what it means for our rights to free speech as individuals in this country, I humbly ask you to hear me out and reserve judgment until the end of the video. I'll express my bias from the start and say that I am 100% behind Count Dankula, and I'm a free speech absolutist, so I accept that my take is not entirely neutral. To start with, let's take a look at the case itself and how it all went down. On the 21st of March 2018, Marcus Meechan, a shitlord, comedian and YouTuber better known as Count Dankula, was prosecuted at Airdrie Sheriff Court in Scotland under so-called hate crime statutes for being grossly offensive and will be awaiting trial until the 23rd of April. The crime? Well, here's where it starts getting weird. Back in April of 2016, Dankula uploaded a video to his YouTube channel, which only had subscribers in the low double digits at the time. It was simply and clearly comedically titled, "Here mate, your dog's a Nazi." In this video, Marcus starts by explaining that his girlfriend Sue basically annoys the fuck out of him constantly by going on about how cute her dog Buddha is. So, to wind her up and make her angry, he decided he would turn the dog into the least cute thing that he could think of, namely, a Nazi. Now, given that Nazis aren't known for their adorability, nor of causing one to want to say, "Oh, he's a good boy," and scratch them behind the ear, although I'm sure you could pay for something like that if that's your thing. What? No, I'm not kink shaming you. Anyway, aye, Nazis are shite, and this was acknowledged from the start. Marcus proceeded to train the dog to raise his right paw in response to, wait for it, Sieg Heil. And yes, there's more. To also respond excitedly, in the way dogs typically do when they think they're going out for a walk, to the phrase, "I'm in Scotland, mate. Do you think I'm fucking daft?" As you'll see as we continue, I've left the phrase out because, as it stands in my country and based on the prosecution of Count Dankula, I could very well face jail time myself simply by repeating it. Suffice to say, it was tasteless, potentially offensive, but not illegal, and posting it online where it could have been seen by anyone probably wasn't the best idea in the world. But anyway, to tie the video together, Dankula spliced clips, music and memes just like his other videos, but you guessed it, this time he used pictures of Adolf Hitler, swastikas, and footage of the dog sitting watching a Nazi speech in German while looking bemused. In the end, around 3.5 minutes of video involving Marcus getting Buddha to do mock Sieg Heil gestures, respond positively to the accursed phrase, and a montage that would give Richard Spencer a hard-on was uploaded to YouTube for Dankula to show to his friends. Now, Dankula is first and foremost a shitposter. His channel then and now has shown no hint of anti-Semitism, racism, fascism or anything more extreme than what's come to be known as dank or spicy memes. Basically, memes and dark humour that push the boundaries of acceptability by making fun of typically horrible things, in the same way comedians have done for decades. It's a well-trodden path, so there was nothing unique about it, and no political agenda behind it. As was revealed later, Marcus was actually a reformed communist with a hammer and sickle tattooed to his chest, so his political beliefs were pretty far to the left by anyone's measure. Anyway, the video went on YouTube, Sue got pissed off because he'd trained Buddha to imitate a Nazi, and as far as Marcus was concerned, that was it. Except it wasn't. The video ended up being posted on Reddit and subsequently went viral, drawing massive attention to it and causing Dankula's subscriber numbers to soar. It was all fun and games until May of 2016 when the police knocked at the door, arrested Marcus under Scotland's farcical hate speech laws and began a 2-year battle to lock him up for so-called hate crimes online. 2 years. This is longer than the fucking Nuremberg trials, just to give you some perspective here. Suspiciously, it must be added, at the moment Marcus was arrested, members of the Scottish media were there to report on it, apparently aware that the arrest would be taking place. This suggests that members of the press were made aware of this in advance by someone, given that no one else would or should have been legally aware of the arrest aside from them within the police force. This sort of ethically questionable, if not outright illegal activity, needs to be investigated thoroughly, but I digress. Over the next 2 years, Marcus and his partner Sue saw delay after delay on the trial, while in the real world, the press purposely misrepresented and outright twisted the story to portray Count Dankula as some sort of extreme right-wing threat to the nation via his pug nationalism or whatever the fuck they thought was happening. Ignoring any attempts by Marcus to explain the video further, apologise for any offence caused to the Jewish people, or convey his side of the story, they shredded the guy, painted him as a Nazi sympathiser at best, and caused his neighbour at the time to smear dog shit all over his front door. As of March of 2018, Marcus Meechan stands to face a prison sentence for something that was clearly a joke and had no malice, aside from maybe pissing off his missus. And if that's a crime, then I'm fucked. The sheriff ruled that context could be disregarded entirely, and that the fact that he said explicitly that this was a joke was irrelevant. As the court saw it, this video was a direct incitement to violence against the Jewish people in Scotland, and Meechan had used the dog to make the idea seem cute and appealing. Essentially, they stated that they and only they may decide what is offensive and what is not offensive. That they, and only they, could decide the context and whether or not it was relevant in a way which genuinely and non-hyperbolically resembles a totalitarian state. He stands to be jailed for doing nothing more than posting what could at worst be called an offensive joke, which, I should know, was never ever actually complained about by anyone without prompting. The complainant in this case is literally the police force and government of Scotland. In their eagerness to create a case for censoring speech, especially online, Police Scotland took the video to Ephraim Borowski of the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities and basically told him to report it to them as a hate crime. This was admitted in court and suggests a highly questionable process wherein the police quite literally create a crime and then seek out, if not create, and encourage a victim. Perhaps this was rooted in a desire to justify their wasting resources on harmless tweets, or to prove how online crime was much worse than, let's say, an extremist group actually telling their followers to go forth and lay waste to the country. Or perhaps it was rooted in the desire to signal their commitment to enforcing cultural Marxism through forced diversity, itself an inherently racist and flawed system where people are treated like children, if not cattle. Now, let's stop for a moment, get some perspective and examine the facts. So we've got a guy who grew up around a similar area to me. It's not a very right-leaning sort of place. It is and always has been a Labour stronghold due to its proximity to the legendary steelworks Ravenscraig, and it shut down in the 80s under a Conservative government. It may seem somewhat irrelevant, but I mention this as I do think it's important in understanding who Marcus Meechan actually is and where he comes from socially and culturally. I can assure you, especially if you were born to a working class family in the 80s, Lanarkshire is not the sort of place that tends to breed Nazis, which may explain in part how the guy ended up with a hammer and sickle tattooed across his heart, but anyway. The long and short of it is that the guy made a video and has now been prosecuted under claims it constitutes a hate crime. He clearly states from the outset that it's a joke for the sole purpose of annoying his girlfriend and gave it a completely ridiculous, screamingly fucking obvious joke title. More sinisterly, the specifics of his charges involve being grossly offensive, a rather subjective and non-specific crime of the feelings, wherein someone could potentially experience a negative emotion for some reason, but experience no actual physical harm. The joke of the video is clearly tasteless, but at no point does it seriously idolise Nazis or make light of the horrors faced by the Jewish people under the totalitarian regime of Adolf Hitler. If anything, it's mocking of the whole idea of Nazis and makes fun of those now comedic, stereotypical gestures we associate with morons like that. I mean, seriously, the guy says at the start of the video that he wants to make the dog into the least cute thing that he can think of and chooses Nazis. To imply any genuine anti-Semitism or respect for National Socialism involved here is ridiculous. But in this case, the Scottish legal system has decided that it's up to them to say what you were thinking and also the intent behind your actions. It's clear that it could be seen as being offensive to some people, given that everything seems to be offensive to someone since around 2012, but in particular to those of the Jewish faith. Ironically, no Jewish members of the public who'd seen the video actually complained about it, aside from maybe the odd comment on YouTube or hitting the dislike button. There was no public outcry until the story was publicised, and Meechan painted as being a hateful, malicious person to fit the prevalent narrative that words online are the equivalent of booting somebody in the bogs. On the contrary, countless Jewish people have written to Dankula, Ephraim Borowski of the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities, the Scottish Government and Police Scotland to express their support for freedom of speech and their right not to be offended or to have offence taken on their behalf. All have been ignored in favour of the narrative of regressive leftism, dressed up as a progressive push for an evolutionarily impossible equality no matter the consequences. We need to bear in mind that offence is always taken, since it occurs when we respond to something, and not given, since it occurs regardless of the intent of the person who created the cause of the response being triggered. In other words, it's subjective and can't exactly be legally defined. Marcus had no intent to cause any offence or create any negative consequences whatsoever for the Jewish people, and at no point even remotely indicated that he agreed with the ideology of National Socialism or of the persecution of the Jews during the Holocaust. As I've said, his own personal political leanings were to the left, gradually becoming less fervent as he got older, but never becoming anything resembling right-wing in any way, shape or form. To suggest that the guy is some sort of Nazi ringleader who's dog whistling, lol, to Nazis over the world via a pug called, of all things, Buddha, is downright false and a disgusting accusation. But if you throw enough shit at the wall, some of it is going to stick, and the press and prosecution went at it like monkeys on meth, leading to a situation where the guy can't ever have a normal life again due to a joke. You can argue about whether the joke is funny, since some will find it hilarious, while others will inevitably find it disgusting, since humour, like offence, upset, happiness, panic, joy, pain, is entirely subjective, i.e., it's completely idiosyncratic and only you will ever have that experience of finding humour in something. Put simply, too late, what I find funny may not be what you find funny, which seems pretty straightforward and self-evident in your experience. All in all, the entire charge came down to the decision of Police Scotland and the Scottish justice system to prosecute a man for a meme, literally. They threw all context away and stated it clearly themselves, telling Marcus that his intent didn't matter either. What mattered is that they had decided that it could, maybe, possibly, kinda, sorta, nearly, almost, maybe, could be be offensive to somebody, and that the feelings of someone, somewhere, mattered more than actual reality. They were effectively prosecuting a crime that had never been committed. As we've seen, Police Scotland took the video to someone who would rightfully be offended by a joke about the atrocities of the Holocaust, but they then encouraged them to push for charges against Dankula under hate speech laws. Remember this: a crime was literally created from a joke, and then the police actively sought out someone who could complain about it and take it to court. If that doesn't suggest a very, very broken system, rolling down a very, very, very dangerous path, then I don't know what else does. Sheriff Derek O'Carroll declared that the court were the ones who would decide the context of the video, and also Meechan's intent. To give you some indication of the competence of the sheriff, this is a man who gave a harsher sentence to a tramp for having a fluorescent toy water pistol than he did to a man who had over 5,000 images of child abuse in his possession. Needless to say, I'm sceptical that this gentleman has any idea of what constitutes appropriate punishment for actual crimes rather than these seeming crimes of the feelings. In another disgusting demonstration of the sort of mentality behind this action, the Scottish legal system refused to provide legal aid to Marcus Meechan, telling him that the inheritance of his girlfriend, not wife, not relative, someone with no legal connection to the man, meant that she could pay for it on his behalf. This is surely something that should make people very concerned. What is most upsetting to me in all this, and the primary reason for making this video, is that this prosecution sets a precedent in the legal system of my country, and it's a direct threat to our freedom of speech. In prosecuting Meechan with a hate crime for causing possible offence, we're creating a world where our words and thoughts can be effectively censored by the government if we don't follow the rules. A literal manifestation of Orwell's thought police. By ignoring context and intent, O'Carroll has made it clear that, in Scotland, we are no longer free to express anything that's remotely out of line with the groupthink of a system seemingly bent on dividing people by race, gender or religion. The case of Count Dankula is alarming. I hate to sound hyperbolic, but the behaviour of the Scottish justice system in this case appears to resemble that of impending totalitarianism. I won't beat about the bush here. This scares me shitless. This is only a small channel and I've got no delusions regarding the sort of impact a video like this will have. But I want to at least add one more voice to the growing crowd from across the political spectrum who are fighting for our ability to think, speak and express ourselves without fear. I've said repeatedly how the joke in the video is in bad taste and that uploading it probably wasn't the greatest of ideas, especially given that most people are sensitive to the horrors of the past. Nobody is arguing that the video is definitively funny. That's impossible. We can only speak for ourselves and how we feel about it. No one person has the right to speak for an entire group without their consent. Yet Ephraim Borowski apparently decided, or was told, to act otherwise and declared the joke abhorrent and offensive, which it may well be, but that did not and should not make it illegal. As we've seen, there was no actual incitement to violence or mocking of the Holocaust directly. He used the unspeakable phrase to make a dog get excited, as he'd evidently learned to associate the phrase with going out for either a walk or a pish. If you've ever had a dog, you know how easy it can be to train them to do tricks for treats. My dog used to go mental whenever the word out was mentioned, and postman sent him barking to the door, so, as Pavlov showed, it's hardly a challenge to train them to respond to stimuli. No one is saying that the joke couldn't possibly have been perceived as being offensive, especially by the Jewish people. At the same time, and hopefully we're all able to hold more than one idea in our heads at any given time, Nobody actually complained until the video was shown to Ephraim Borowski. Nobody reported it as a hate crime. In fact, nobody actually cared all that much, since there are more genuinely anti-Semitic videos out there posted by people who genuinely hold these disgusting beliefs, but yet aren't pursued with this sort of ferocity. I want to make it clear here, since Jewish people figure highly in this story, that I have no issue whatsoever with the Jewish and don't buy into any of the bullshit conspiracy stuff, nor believe that this is some big scheme by the Semites or some... I think the gentleman in question has an agenda, no doubt, but I also accept that he believes what he's doing is the right thing for the Jewish people. However, it seems many Jewish people disagree with him and are able to see that this was a joke. And many have also pointed out how, in taking this course of action, the government have crossed a line and encroached upon one of our most fundamental freedoms, our right to speak freely. Look, I'll level with you and put it on the record again. I've never been a political guy, and I'm woefully underinformed on the specifics of each party, economics and the like, but I think that this is something that goes far beyond politics. Not that I should even have to bring this up on my channel, but when it comes to my own views, I'm left-leaning overall, but I've got no sympathies for the alt-right or the extreme left who've made a mockery of what being a progressive or liberal actually means. Even then though, my engagement with politics is minimal, and this isn't an area where I'd normally chip in. The right to speak, to criticise, encourage, insult, condemn, offend and upset people is fundamental as part of our democratic society, whether you like it or not. Laws already exist to prevent things like incitement to violence and attacks on people on the basis of their skin colour, ethnicity or any other protected minority. These more recent developments in many cases are coming to resemble archaic blasphemy laws, where certain religions are apparently beyond criticism and protected, while others are still seen as fair game. These laws are being applied arbitrarily and not in a uniform fashion, which is indicative of the motivation behind them: to silence certain groups and people who would speak out against the government-fed groupthink perpetuated in the mainstream. A narrative wherein everything you do is wrong and only submission to the demands of the state will redeem you. Sound familiar? Aye, that didn't end too well the last time, did it? We allowed terrorist groups like Hezbollah and their sympathisers to march in the streets, whether it's in support of the IRA or ISIS, preaching bigotry, hatred and despicable ideologies. Some claim they're freedom fighters, while others are just too scared of being called racist for calling out the brutality of things like Islamofascism. This is preposterous. When did it become wrong to call out bad ideas? When did we lose our ability to criticise the actions and beliefs of groups who have nothing but disdain for our culture, our country and the people therein? People have fought and died for our right to speak freely, and now, with this precedent being set, and the way in which the hate crime laws of our country are formulated, we are set to potentially lose it unless we can change the system and speak up as one. In prosecuting Marcus Meechan, a very clear and menacing signal was sent to the people of Scotland. We're watching you and monitoring what you say. If you say the wrong thing, you're going to jail, and we can disregard both context and intent. Many people are quick to jump to the claim that people only want to use free speech as an excuse to abuse others, but that's complete bollocks. Look at countries like North Korea. Where's their freedom of fucking speech? The lack of it has led to the deaths and abuse of millions throughout the last century. Surely that's considerably worse than someone having their precious wee feelings hurt. In keeping with the theme of the Dankula case, look at Nazi Germany. The very thing that people are suggesting that Meechan was supporting restricted the speech of the people which contributed to the occurrence of the fucking Holocaust. People didn't speak out until it was too late, for fear of persecution and prosecution, just like we're seeing here, and we cannot let that happen again. Right now, we are seeing the Scottish and the British governments implementing laws that will lead to our speech and in turn our thoughts being restricted based on what they declare to be, and no pun intended, verboten. In Germany, the intellectuals were shamefully ignorant of what was going on as they felt protected by their, what we might rightly call, privilege, until it was too late for them. In the modern day, it's the media, celebrities, Marxist academics, the new intelligentsia, I suppose, who are full of normal, decent people, and ignoring the fact that their liberties and freedoms are being destroyed constantly. Under current legislation and with this sort of precedent, comedy like Monty Python would no longer be permitted. It would be declared grossly offensive and its creators potentially thrown in jail. Even more modern programmes for the 90s and early 2000s, such as Big Train, Father Ted and the IT Crowd, not to mention stuff like Borat and Ali G, if viewed through this particular ideological lens, are littered with racist and offensive jokes. Or at least they could easily be interpreted, it would seem, in a Scottish court to be such. Personally, I don't think that edgy comedy should be criminalised, as we're seeing now, it often creates cultural disturbances that expose the ludicrous natures of such moralistic, emotion-based laws. While clearly not a comparison, and no offence to Dankula, people like George Carlin and Lenny Bruce have all shown up inconsistencies in the system and caused positive changes in our ability to communicate freely. You don't have to agree with what someone is saying to defend their right to say it. Which brings me to another important point. Many people are criticising Dankula for accepting the support of Tommy Robinson, a polarising figure in British politics who some regard as a racist hate-monger and others see as a straight-talking everyman. While I can see the argument people make in that aligning yourself with someone who's basically right-wing in their beliefs could both reflect poorly on you and also draw unnecessary attention to them and what you may see as questionable. When it comes to something as important as freedom of speech and expression though, I think we need to drop our differences and unite under this one goal. Together, we can create much more noise. By putting our politics and differences to one side, we can stand up for our right to speak and then, once we've got our shit sorted, go back to our squabbles. I've said this before on Twitter and I'll say it again here. I have no issue with someone with as much media draw as Tommy Robinson standing up for free speech. He's not the figurehead of this movement. There are no figureheads in this movement. There are people uniting for the sake of our ability to live in a democratic, liberal society where we're free to speak up. Count Dankula as the sacrificial lamb in this ritual to political correctness. He'll be the first one to tell you he's not leading anything other than posting pictures of his balls on Snapchat and calling people names on Discord. But his case has shone a light on a dark, nefarious set of laws that are currently being used to strip an individual of his right to even make a joke. Since their introduction by Tony Blair, the man who destroyed the Labour Party, these so-called hate speech laws have done nothing to prevent anything. Crimes in major cities have risen massively. Children have been raped by gangs of Muslim men while the police and social services knowingly turned a blind eye for fear of being called racist. Far right-wing hate-mongers have seen an increase in their followings due to normal people being pushed further and further away from common sense by being called racists on a daily basis. Don't get me wrong, I've got no sympathy and I would expect a stronger mind to forge its own path. But sadly, many people are basically as thick as pig shit and easily influenced by emotional dropkicks. Create a fear and people will respond, and all sides are playing the same game. As we see in the case of Count Dankula, it would seem that the police and the government are more concerned with controlling our speech online than tackling actual crimes in the real world, where real people of all races and ethnicities are suffering. If anything, it wouldn't be entirely unreasonable to suggest that these laws have been set up for the beginning to control people, dictate the media narrative, and bend public perception depending on what the powers that be want to project at that time. It's evident so far that they've done little to help or reduce actual crime. All they appear to have done is to divide people into categories, spread negativity, and attempt to silence people for having beliefs that aren't what's spouted on the news. If the mainstream media were to be believed, all white people are evil. Women are the victims of an ironically Sharia-like patriarchy who grab at their vaginas every day, and that everybody thinks that Islamo-fascists and your everyday Muslims are basically the same thing, while also being very much feminist and supportive of the LGBT movement. It's beyond absurd. Now though, we're inching closer to being completely unable to criticise any of these ridiculous claims about the way things actually are in the real world. If we can't criticise bad ideas, expose them and bring them to the light to be debated and refuted, we are well and truly fucked, and we cannot let that fucking happen. This is too big a deal. Comedy is only the beginning of this thing, and sooner or later, these same laws are going to impact on you, your family and your friends. You'll no longer be able to share a crude joke, express a contrary opinion to the authorised groupthink, or engage in any activity critical of selected ideologies. In Scotland at least, you could potentially be charged with a hate crime for merely uttering certain words, regardless of your intent or the context. This, ladies and gentlemen, or whatever you're identifying as, is a dangerous, terrifying precedent we are seeing set by a government, particularly in Scotland, that's coming to resemble the very worst of the 20th century. As I keep saying, this has to go beyond politics. This has to go beyond identity, race, religion, colour, creed, whatever fucking arbitrary distinction you want to make. This is about us as human beings. Us as individuals in this world where we have the right to speak up and speak out against tyranny and oppression, to debate, to argue, to fight in the arena of ideas to ensure that we achieve equality, not of outcome, but of opportunity. I've said it already. You don't need to agree with somebody to defend their right to speak. Unless they're directly breaking the law and calling for violence or something, there should be no restrictions on speech. The only way we can destroy bad ideas is to expose them and show them to be flawed and incompatible with the development of humanity. Some of the people who have spoken up in light of the Dankula case hold political, social and moral views which I disagree with strongly. But on this one issue, and this issue alone, I'm willing to put my feelings to one side and stand alongside them as long as the goal is pure and not hijacked to support one particular belief system. That in itself would be counterproductive, and I think that any sensible supporter of free speech would probably agree that we really need a compromise here, if nowhere else. We can't allow this fight to become about any party. Our freedom to speak, think, and express ourselves is what gave rise to our eroding liberal democracy, and it's going to be taken away unless we take action. Drop the prejudice. Drop the arguments. Drop the childish fucking squabbling and understand that you and only you can do something about this by speaking up, speaking out, and sharing the story of Count Dankula across the world so that this utter stupidity, ignorance, and the bigotry of low expectations present in our system is exposed. I know this has been far removed from my usual videos, and I'm grateful to those who've stuck around for the whole thing, but needless to say, normal service will be resumed shortly. This has gone on far longer than I anticipated, but there's a lot to say, and I wanted to word it as carefully as possible, so hopefully it can all make some sort of sense to you, and you can understand where I'm coming from. There's a well-known poem from World War II called First They Came, which tells the story of the German intellectual who didn't speak up when the Nazis came for successive groups of people, until finally there was nobody left to speak for him. It's chilling in context, but well-known YouTuber, Dankula supporter and liberalist Sargon of Akkad paraphrased it on a recent video, and it felt like a kick in the gut. I'll leave you with his paraphrase, but I would ask you to consider seriously just who they could be coming for next. First, they came for the comedians.